Submersed, essentially, it's this foray into the kind of like niche micro community of DIY amateur submersible enthusiasts. And also just kind of like the wonder and madness that oceans inspire in us. And so initially, you mentioned like Peter Madsen and Kim Wall. So in 2017, Peter Madsen was this Danish inventor, and he was into like making rockets, like I mean, very in a very Muskian fashion. And then he was also a do-it-yourself submersible enthusiast, and he built a submersible called the UC3 Nautilus, which at the time was the largest amateur submersible in the world. He lived in the Refshulun neighborhood of Copenhagen, Denmark. And there's a journalist by the name of Kim Wall, originally from Sweden, but who had moved to Copenhagen, and she had heard about this local eccentric, Peter Madsen. And she wanted to interview him for an article she was planning on writing, potentially for Wired magazine, where she published a bit. And so Peter Madsen invited Wall to conduct the interview on board his submarine, the UC3 Nautilus. And they set sail and submersed, and Kim Wall never returned. And it later came out that Madsen brutally murdered her and just ended up burying her at sea. He was a terrible liar. He made up all of these stories about it, but initially, Jake, I was not intending on writing about this murder. This was not. I didn't intend for this to become a true crime book as it became. Um, Initially, I wanted to write about simply the weird, eccentric characters that populate the very real, believe it or not, amateur submersible community. These are folks who are so obsessed with sinking into the deep sea that without any formal engineering training, um, they just fashion submarines in their backyards and garages, these dream machines to pilot them to their fantasy spaces. And should they set sail, they oftentimes do so to their own detriment or to the detriment of others. And I really wanted to investigate that compulsion, I suppose. Um, the germ of it was so years ago, I was running a little breakfast restaurant in Juneau, Alaska, and I had saved up my tips and ended up going on a road trip through the state. And I ran into this eccentric outsider artist living in this off the grid one room cabin in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, in the middle of nowhere. And he was one of these guys. He was obsessed with the deep sea, and he was fashioning his own amateur submersible. And I'm telling you, it looked like one backyard kiddie pool downturned on top of another. And it seemed like no more seaworthy than that. But this guy was determined to set sail in the thing. And so initially I was like, wow, is this guy an anomaly, or are there others like him? Is there a community? And then I found this community, and I embedded myself into this community for the better part of 5 years. And then eventually I found that the more research I was conducting and the more folks I was talking to, I kept bumping up against the story of that murder, the Kim Wall story and the Peter Madsen story. A lot of people in the community were talking about it. When I was doing archival research on the amateur submersible community, that story kept coming up. And so I felt like I had to reckon with it. And so then one of the animating questions of the book became, at what point does wonder kind of, if sufficiently chased and pushed toward the extreme, start to gather darker, more threatening traits? So the boring stuff is like I went through a lot of court transcripts, like court testimony transcripts. There were a lot of text messages between like Kim Wall's text messages and Peter Madsen's text messages that were made public. Um, yeah, was just like going through all of these, photographs, of them, pre-murder and then Madsen post-murder and things like this. I read, everything written about Peter Madsen that I could find. I read everything written about Kim Wall and by Kim Wall, that I could find, too. Um, and in order to get the sense of what it was like to board one of these submersibles and actually go down, I actually found this guy by the name of Carl Stanley. He's originally from Jersey, but he's currently living in Roatan, Honduras, where he operates a personal submersible where he takes folks down. And so he built the thing in a defunct airport hangar in Idabel, Oklahoma, and had it towed out to Honduras because out there he doesn't need to have the thing properly licensed, classed, and insured. So he could monetize it to the tourist industry, but it's completely unlicensed, unregulated. And so I boarded this thing with Carl Stanley and actually went down to 2,000 feet beneath the surface in a submersible that was hardly larger than an industrial laundry dryer, in order to get firsthand experience as to what that was like. And it's written about in the book, which was difficult for me as a claustrophobe, one, and two, I can't swim, Jake. I'm afraid of the ocean. I've had recurring drowning nightmares since age 5. And so in a weird way, this became about the test of a phobia for me, also. But when I'm chasing a story like this, in addition to all of like the archival PI stuff, I'm not like a naturally intrepid person, I don't think. But when I'm investigating a story and when I'm tucked into a project, I feel as if like I could tuck my fears into that project, and the project itself sort of cushions or dampens these things that I would otherwise be really afraid to do. And I'm able to like keep my head down and do it if it's tucked into the confines of a project. So I got into that submersible and went on this 4-hour dive to 2,000 feet below the surface and saw the most amazing bioluminescent creatures that you can imagine. I mean, I just became completely unstuck from time in my own body. Would never do it again, especially in the aftermath of the recent Titan submersible implosion. But I'm very happy that I did it.